Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. I am Joe Shy, presiding over the meeting tonight. Mayor Smith is unable to join us.
Can you say the date, please?
The date is February 9th, 2017. Jill, would you take roll call, please?
Yes. Andy Wilson,
Present.
Joe Shy,
Present.
Jason Daly,
Here.
Mike Parsons,
Here.
Ruth Creer. Didn't know if I was supposed to call that or not, but you may want to take the opportunity to.
Ruth Creer has respectively resigned from the City Council, and we thank her for her service.
Okay, and the mayor, you already said is excused, so.
She is.
we have a
Very
quorum.
good. We do have a quorum. Andy, will you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
For the mayor's report, the only item that Mayor Smith wanted me to bring up was, of course, the vacancy left by Ruth Creer. And he wanted to let it be known that on the utility bill that will be coming out to all the citizens, there will be an invitation for all people interested to submit a name or come forward. So, and as long as the council is okay waiting to the next council meeting to see who those folks are, we can do that. Wait. So, and then Jill, you said that there was something about a water main.
The county has let us know that they are working on a rate change, a rate increase for the water. They haven't changed the rate since they took over the system in 2011. And so they are talking about needing to do that, and there is going to be a meeting held after our council meeting in 2 weeks. So on I believe that's the 23rd. Let's see, February 23rd, right here after the council meeting. They will be holding a public meeting for people to come and see what their options are, and they haven't made a decision on how exactly it's going to be done yet. So there's a couple different options, and they're going to present that to the community for their consideration. So if you're interested, if your neighbors are interested, let them know they'd like to have as many people as possible come and give their input. So
That's exciting. Council reports. Any council reports tonight?
No.
All right, moving on. Agenda approval.
I make a motion, we approve the agenda, city council meeting agenda for 2/9/2017.
We have a motion by Mr. Wilson to approve the agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Mr. Daly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Minutes approval.
Make a motion to approve the city council meetings on January 26th, 2017.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the council meeting minutes from January 26th. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Voucher approval.
I make a motion, we approve the vouchers for the 1st of February 2017 in the amount of $35,935.35.
Mr. Wilson has a motion to approve the vouchers. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Parsons. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Special reports. Civil West Engineering. You have the floor, folks.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Matt Wadlington from Civil West Engineering.
Kristen Steiner.
We've been working on the the wastewater facilities plan. We're gonna try and get through this pretty quick, so if anyone has questions, let us know. We're gonna talk a little bit about what we went over on our last meeting. We'll give you some updates on the preliminary cost estimates for a low pressure collection system. We've narrowed down the wastewater treatment alternatives to just 3, and we will talk to you guys about the land treatment discharge option. At our last meeting, we let you know that our goal is to provide a viable, cost-efficient solution to the wastewater issue and get you guys to meet your permit in a, like I said, in a viable and cost-efficient way. We went over some of the past recommendations in the past reports. Those included 2005,
9 and 15.
And then we talked briefly about some outside the box solutions in terms of a low pressure collection system and then a land application. So we'll hit on those more today. Last time we were here, our projector wasn't working, so I tried to draw this box on the paper and it didn't work out so well. Right now, everything that everyone has been looking so far is down in this box, the gravity collection system and discharging to the creek. What we're trying to look at is other options, a low pressure collection system, and doing some land treatment. And so there are kind of four different paths we're looking down right now. All have advantages and disadvantages, and all have costs, and we'll go over those as we have them. This is a layout of a low pressure collection system. It's pretty similar to your gravity system in that everybody's connected and all feeds down to the treatment plant. It would be installed in the road. It's 3 feet deep, so it's pretty easy installation as compared to a gravity system. But it's throughout town. Each house would have a pump in their front yard, backyard, wherever it's going to be hooking up to the sewer. It ends up looking like a manhole lid in the ground. That's all you see of it. The idea behind this is that yes.
I have a question. Is that something that when it collects and grinds, does it store it and then it all gets, like, a section of town dumps it one time, or
Yeah, what it'll do is
that
it'll
how
store
it's
it.
controlling the flow into
It'll store it up to, I think, 30 or 40 gallons, and just depending on how much water you're using, once it gets up to a certain level, it'll pump out. And so it's not on a grid system where
okay.
a section of town will pump at the same time. It's just whenever yours is full, it pumps out. And the system will be set up so that if everyone is trying to pump at the same time, let's say the power goes out and for a day and then comes back on, and everybody's pump comes on, it's not going to be able to handle that. The pumps will recognize that, and they'll wait their turn.
Right.
So
Is this something that replaces all the sewer lines, or uses some current ones?
It replaces all of them,
All the way to the ponds, or to this?
all the way down to the treatment plant. Yeah. It'll hook into the house connection, and it'll be just far enough on the property that the pump system is put in, and from there to the house is the same sort of connection system right now.
Okay.
So it wouldn't go all the way to the house.
Not all
It would
the
go all the way to the property.
correct, and it would probably go. I think we had this discussion a little bit last time, in that it might have to go on the property. We might have to get an easement to put it on the property, depending on how it's laid out.
I think the question that's trying to be clarified is there going to be an opportunity for infiltration between the house and the pump? And
Yeah,
yes, it would be, because that is not the pressurized system there. That would only be gravity.
right. And so what we'd want to do with this is do a very thorough smoke testing where we identify any.
But you would also be able, with this system, correct me if I'm wrong, you would also be able to see if a house is pumping 1,000 gallons a day compared to a normal.
Yep.
And figure out what's going on with that.
Yeah, you'll be able to track the run times of the pumps, and so, you could conceivably bill sewer based on.
Like you would have
Yes,
a
I'm
counter
sure.
on it, like how many times it pumped
Mhm.
30 gallons out or whatever?
So if you see that someone's house is using a significantly larger amount of pumping out significantly larger volume of water whenever it rains, then you know
They're using
They
their
got
gutters.
probably gonna have,
Drainage into the,
And conceivably, you could bill based on
based on that.
that pump, and so it would incentivize people to disconnect those connections.
Those downspouts.
Great.
Well, it could be in an like now it's in the ordinance that you're not supposed to have
Yeah.
downspouts and stuff connected, so.
Can I ask Jill, how long ago was that enacted? Because,
The ordinance?
yeah,
I can't say when it was
Okay.
enacted, but
I don't want to
it's
get
been
off
a
track, I was
while.
just curious. Okay.
It's been on that, it's been that way for a while.
Did, since we're still on the collection aid system, did you guys take a look at the roads? Like, are they going to be able to go along the side of the road? Because our roads are so narrow here, or are they going to have to go in the yard?
We assume that it would go in the actual pump system or the main line.
The pump?
No, we're assuming the pump would go in the yard.
Just inside, yeah.
We haven't looked detailed yet on
Okay.
that. Made assumptions that some of them are in the street and have to be traffic rated, and some of them are in the yard. We just ballpark 50-50 that it won't be that way. So doing this, it doesn't, and we had discussion last time, it doesn't completely eliminate I&I, but it significantly reduces it. Do you have any other questions about the?
It would eliminate it from the pumps in,
Right,
correct?
right.
So it's just going into the pump, so we'd be able to track it
Yep.
really easy. Okay.
Is there anywhere else that it would be, other than the flow meter at the plant, is there anywhere else along the route where it would be monitored or metered?
Each pump.
I mean, after each pump, like after it gets to a certain point, I mean, I don't know. 'Cause
Well, you would
I
have like
mean,
an inline meter somewhere in town to see.
yeah, where some of the lines meet or something. I guess I'm just trying to think, the pipes that are in the street, that are the main lines, that aren't on the private property, if they're leaking, I guess if it's a pressurized system, if they're leaking, it would leak out. It wouldn't leak in because it's pressurized.
you would also see that in a little bit of pressure loss if there was any kind of leak.
Okay, so that's how you watch for.
Is pressurized all the way to the plant?
Yeah. Any other questions about that layout? These are our preliminary costs for that system. Construction cost of 3.7 million, adding contingencies and taxes gets us to 4.5 million. Engineering and administrative, we get up to $5.5 million. That's assuming that each pump is hooked into the individual power source at the house. If we went with a centralized power system that would power them all, it bumps up the cost by another $1.4 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. The advantage of that is that if power goes out, the city has a generator trailer that they can run around and plug in 4 or 5 different places and pump out zones, even with the power out. But it's not mandatory. It would work without it. So we'll have to flush that out. So it's a big cost, and we talked about that going this route is going to be a big cost in the collection system, which is going to lead to smaller costs in the treatment system. I guess that's the end of my discussion on that collection system. Are there any other questions about
So
that?
that's just the collection system, that doesn't include upgrading the plant at all?
Correct. Yeah. So far, all this is just the collection system.
That's a big number.
That is a big number, and we're not
Really
even
big
to where
number.
we're passing the state effluent, iodine
Well,
stuff.
in theory, this would reduce the amount of flow we have in the system to such a great extent that it would probably get us a lot closer. I guess it would be something you could ask Nev if the impact of going from millions of gallons a day to 50,000 gallons a day, which is the actual usage.
To show you what your INI does to our plant and our testing down there, 3 weeks ago, our effluent water was cleaner than our influent water was cleaner than our effluent water when I tested. Our TSSs were lower on our inflow, but that's when we're putting 500,000 gallons through. We put 3/4 million gallons through the plant yesterday, and it's designed maximum 130,000 gallons. So when all that INI comes in, the 40 or 50,000 gallons a day of sewage gets diluted out. So that throws all of our testing off. You know, if your influence all diluted down, you're not going to get very many solids out of it. Your BOD is going to be low.
Right.
But then when I go test our lagoons, it's going to be, through the roof.
Because they take that influent number and they say you have to clean that up by a certain percentage. And
If
if it's
100
already
comes
really
in-
watered down,
If 100 comes in, the most that can go out to 85 for us to stay in our percentage.
so the
Yeah,
less
we have to be
diluted
within
it is,
85%. We have
yeah,
to be
the
within
less
85%.
diluted it is. If it comes through and it's not all diluted with water and it's yuckier when it comes in, then it's easier to meet that percentage than when you bring in really diluted.
And then in the summertime, we reverse that role. Our influence is so dirty coming in. And then we start growing. Right now, we've been growing algae for a month now with this nice weather we've been having. And this time of the year, I shouldn't have green water. That should come up in my spring and summertime. But my filters for my solids is as green as can be. And that adds to the weight, so that throws off that balance. We're trying to hit that 85% thing, so we got problems on both ends.
Yeah. And so what we're looking at here is like I said, this is a high cost for collection. But if this results, and I'm not saying it will, but if it results in a treatment plant that's only $2 million, it may be cheaper than not doing this and having a treatment plant that costs $8 million. So we're gonna look through this, add all the numbers up. We're not asking you guys to make a decision on this today. We'll provide all the numbers, but I wanted to get you kind of where we're starting, where we're looking. But you're right, it's a big number.
Can I ask you a question? In the upper right hand, it says to provide power to the grinder stations. So it's an additional 730,000 to make it work.
That's if we went with a public power option. There's also the option that each grinder system is hooked up to the house's electrical connection.
But that says for electrical wiring connections and panels. Would those have to go in no matter what the power source was?
No, those would be main panels that would be located throughout the city that would then feed the individual grinder systems. Without that, then you just pull a wire from the house and it's fed.
Okay.
It's powered that way.
So in a nutshell, there's a scenario in which you don't need that additional 730,000. Got it. Thanks.
Okay, so next I want to talk real quick about the wastewater treatment requirements. There's basically two rules of how they determine your permit requirements. One is water quality based limits. The other is technology based limits. The water quality based says that you have to maintain high water quality for the fish and for the environment in the river. And so as a river changes, the Olakwa may be different from the Cowlitz in terms of what's already in there. And so your permit limits may be different depending on where you discharge and what the water source you're discharging into. Another base is the technology. If you have lagoons that you have now, they're one of the simplest technologies and don't treat a lot. And so your permit levels are pretty high because it doesn't have the technology to reduce that much. If you went with a reverse osmosis system that takes absolutely everything out, your permit limits are going to be almost zero. You're not going to be able to discharge because your treatment technology is higher. So as we're looking through different treatment technologies, it's kind of changing our targets. So we've made some assumptions. These are the current permit levels that you're at now. We've made some assumptions in what we're looking for in these treatment, but they're not dialed in yet because we haven't selected a treatment type. So it'll change those permit levels. But we're a 30-75. We're going to target a 30-30. The state's also required that we add a temperature requirement and a copper requirement. Those are the two big ones that are going to be more difficult to treat for. The temperature, the way it is now, it goes to the lagoons. It sits there for in the summer. It can sit there for weeks, months in the summer before it gets released. And it's just absorbing all the heat. And so by the time it gets discharged to the river, it's 80 degrees. Weren't there instances where it was higher than 80 degrees?
Oh, yeah, we've been higher than
So if we do a different treatment method that treats it quicker and get it out quicker, it doesn't have that chance to raise the temperature. So that's how we would deal with that, is doing a more confined treatment type. We've narrowed down the treatment types we've been looking at based on cost to 3 different types. An activated sludge, which is an aerated system where you take part of the sludge that results, part of the bacteria, and return that to the beginning of the system, and then it flows through the aeration, and those bugs keep eating, and then they're returned back to the beginning. It requires a fair amount of space. It's probably, of the 3 options that we have, it's one that requires the most space. All 3 of these options, I think, would fit on the size of that northernmost lagoon that's down there now. They're all relatively small. If we went with a low pressure system in conjunction with this, we have much smaller clarifier sizes, less air required. That's going to be standard for any of these treatment alternatives. The next one is a sequencing batch reactor. It's similar, except it doesn't return sludge. It fills up a tank, aerates it, lets it settle down, and then it decants off the clean part, and then more water comes in and fills it back up, it aerates it. So it's the same bugs that are cleaning it, just in a little bit different.
How is that different than a lagoon? Isn't that kind of what a lagoon does in a sense?
Well, a lagoon assumes that water that comes in at one side is routed through it, and you have aeration in part of it, and so it's going through there. But what ends up really happening is that it short circuits, it goes around areas, and so what comes out on the other end isn't always aerated and hasn't had the treatment that it needs. These ensure that all the water's mixed and it's all treated.
Is this a covered thing, or is this exposed to the sun? Same
These would be
an outdoor
exposed.
thing?
Yeah.
Are there any cities around that has a similar system like this that we could?
There
Ask
are.
the city if
These
they-
are all very common, and we can get you a
Oh.
list if you guys are interested in kind of seeing the different ones. That'd be a good idea.
That'd be great.
One close by that you probably drive by all the time is in Woodland, right off the freeway, right on the east side of the freeway. There's Near that airport,
Airport.
kind of the north
Mhm.
part of the airport.
Are they in SBR?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll see if we can get you a list and if you guys wanted to go and look at them and talk to
Yeah, I'd like to
people.
be able to talk to them and see just how many
Yeah.
problems they have or have had,
That'd
or,
be a good idea.
thank you.
Again, if we went with a low pressure system, it has some cost savings. Smaller basin volumes, less power required for air. You don't need a equalization storage because it's all coming in pretty regularly. And then the last one is an MBR, membrane bioreactor. This is the highest technology one. It creates the best quality effluent. Generally, these are more expensive, especially when you have high variations in your flow. So if we didn't go with the pressure collection system, this would be way too expensive because it has to be sized for that peak flow. If we're going with a pressure collection system that has a very constant flow rate, these can be cost efficient. And again, they would produce the best quality.
Is this what Winlock has? You know, the
Yeah,
MBR?
they got ABR.
These take a little less maintenance than the traditional. You hear about MBRs or these hollow tube. This is a little bit different, so the maintenance costs over time are a little less than the traditional MBRs.
The Kubota.
But again, I wouldn't even want to say that the benefits of going with a low pressure, how they would affect this, because if you didn't do that, this probably isn't the way to go, because they get expensive when they have to be real big.
I think we're all aware that we need to fix the inflow also.
Yeah.
so.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's a big cost,
Big
and so
cost.
it may not be that that's the most bang for your buck, but we're gonna try and work through that and let you know. I'll let Christy talk about the land treatment.
Could I ask a question just between those three, the activated sludge, SBR, and MBR? Could you just talk a little bit about the operator requirements and both the time of operation and also the certification? Just in general terms, because that would kind of
Yeah,
affect on costs.
An activated sludge is the most basic of those, and probably requires, Chrissy, I'm guessing that they're all going to require pretty close to the same amount of operator time. The MBR is a more advanced technology, but it's also more automated. So it's not as intuitive, but
It does some of the work for you.
it does a lot of the work for you. So I would guess that they're very similar in terms of operator requirements.
Thanks.
What about certification?
I think that they're all going to
One,
require the
two?
same, probably two.
Too. And I think what we're probably concerned hour-wise, are they not looking at a full-time employee for one of these plants, or is a requirement somewhere for half-time employees? We're fortunate with our lagoons, we can go less than that.
Yeah, my guess is this is at least a half-time employee.
The low pressure, back to that real quick,
Mhm.
that's going to take some manpower
Mhm.
just to maintain it, correct? I know my brother lives in Camas, and that's what they have there. And they have a little alarm on the side of their house that sounds off, and you have to call a number, and then somebody brings a truck out.
Yeah, and so yeah, that'll require more operations than a gravity system for sure. And they'll have to be able to replace those pumps. And those pumps, don't have an indefinite life. I think they have a 10 or 15 year lifespan. So if you're looking at 800 pumps or 500 pumps through town, or many there may be, you can divide that by 15 and assume that that's how many pumps you're going to have to be replacing every year. So there's definitely an operator requirement for that. And what we'll do is provide a total life cycle cost of these options. It'll include operation and maintenance costs in our final comparison and everything.
Thank you.
Is a gravity fed thing out of, and not an option?
No, it certainly is an option. We're just trying to think of ways to reduce the flow so that the
I
treatment.
mean, we're
Cost would be-
such on a good hill here, so I'm just like, why do
Now,
we have to have?
replacing the gravity is probably not cost effective. I mean, it's much deeper, it's a lot more expensive to install, and so our options are we live with the system we have now, we keep trying to do inflow and infiltration improvements, but you're gonna end up with quite a bit of I&I. That's just how the systems are. Replacing the gravity system would be very expensive.
You say that's how the systems are, so are we not the only ones that have this much difference? That's kind of a normal thing?
I wouldn't say that it's normal, but you're certainly not alone. It's not uncommon to see 10 or 15 times more wastewater flowing in during storm events than during dry periods. So, it's costly because you end up having to treat it. So one way or the other, you're gonna be paying the cost, whether you fix the system or pay to treat it. But no, not alone.
I was just, sorry, this is kind of weird, but I know we're really close in proximity, but we need to really use our biggest voices so that
Okay.
everyone can hear well, and so I'm just going to encourage you to shout at us. Don't feel uncomfortable if you're shouting.
Any other questions about?
What? Just kidding.
Oh, wow, I'm totally gonna just hammer it there.
Do you have any questions, Andy?
Oh, that's right, this instance microphone doesn't.
No, that one doesn't work. So, but if you speak up, these will pick it up.
So one of the options we're looking at for the effluent discharge, once it's treated, is a land treatment option. And this would allow you guys to discharge all year round, because in the dry season, the discharge into the Olico Creek is very, very restricted, so it's going to be difficult to discharge within your limits. So we've been looking at different options for land treatment as far as locations, and I mean, basically what happens is once the effluent is treated, it will be pumped up to the land treatment site, and then it'll be dispersed through irrigation sprinklers, and the infiltration through the soil will help clean up the rest of the wastewater and dispose of it safely. So these are, I mean, we started out looking at kind of anywhere that had a large enough area that could accept the amount of effluent we expect you guys to be treating. And that was a mix of 2 timber properties and a few privately owned properties that had extra land. Letters went out to the property owners of the private properties to see if they were, to gauge their interest and willingness to work with the city on accepting their effluent, and then we got one response back. So that will be taken into consideration for the phase 2 of a hydrogeologic study, which phase 1 looked at the 2 timber properties, and good thing, because the one we were really hoping would work, unfortunately, is the Weyerhaeuser property just south of the treatment plant, but the slopes are so steep that a land treatment option just isn't viable.
The slopes are steep, and the bedrock is relatively shallow, and the soil type just doesn't work with land treatment.
Absorption.
Yeah.
But the northern timber property is Jorgensen Timber. They have an area on their site that is large enough. It has acceptable soils, and Jorgensen is willing to help however they can. So they'll be included in a phase 2 study where they'll go out and dig test pits and get an actual idea of how fast that soil is infiltrating, what kind of vegetation is there, and then we would be able to look at, hammer out costs and more detailed information about.
And it's something that we
That
have to
option.
actually put a pipeline from there to the site?
To the treatment plant.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pressurized.
How many pump stations would that take?
Just one. It's a very small pump station at the treatment plant, and then it just pumps water up straight to the site, no stops in between. And
Do you know the distance between?
yes,
I'm not sure even where the Jorgensen property starts.
You want to go back to the big picture map? Yeah, so the treatment plant is right down here. This was the Weyerhaeuser site that we were really hoping would work. The Jorgensen site is up here. What's the road that goes alongside the railroad?
And then,
Right where it turns and goes left, and you can cross the tracks to the right. Right there is the corner of the property.
okay.
So it's a ways up there, but it's a big property, and like she said, there's available sites on it that could work.
So what they were looking at in this first phase of the study was kind of a whatever they could find in public domain, a lot of soil research, the topography, what the land's been used for, bedrock, groundwater, and based on that, this area, unfortunately, it's kind of on up in here was a feasible area for the treatment. So they'll look further into that, and then the private property owner that responded is located kind of right in the middle. So they'll be included in this phase 2 study as well. If another thing we're looking at is easements, how difficult is it going to be? Initially, we were worried about going along the railroad because it's difficult to get easements from them. But if this property owner is willing to work with us, then we have a very small area to cover where it may be hopefully a little easier to get a pipeline through there.
And this is something that would be along with the low pressure system and an MBR and land treatment, or is this takes the place of having like the MBR, or?
So the MBR would be the wastewater treatment, and then this would basically be how you dispose of it in the summer months when you can't discharge it into the creek.
There's 5 different avenues we're looking at this, and so the collection system is a separate issue, the treatment is a separate issue, and then the discharge is a separate issue. They all may go together, they may not. One thing about the MBR is it may be able to treat good enough that it can discharge in the summer, and we wouldn't need a land application.
Right.
But if it's more expensive and the SBR is less expensive, and we can do a land application that's less expensive than the MBR, then this would be the option. So we're trying to find a bunch of different variables.
And so if you're not going to do land treatment, then you would probably end up having to build enough storage to hold water
Until the river
until
rises.
you could discharge again. And I think it's about 6 months.
Is it something that can be trucked feasibly? Does anybody
It
do
can,
that?
but
Because
it's-
I know that they do some sludge stuff out in between here and Winlock, and they truck it.
Well, the sludge is different than this is just the cleaned effluent, so this is just the liquid.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So it's,
And even in the summer, I think we're talking 50,000 gallons a day.
Yeah, we've got 50,000.
So if you were to truck that, that's
Significant.
talking 5 trucks a day,
Not cheap.
then
Yeah.
that's gonna add up.
so this is kind of getting back to your question about distance. The Jorgensen timber, depending on what we can work out with them, would be about 1.5 to 2.5 miles. Obviously, we would get as close as we could to save costs on that. And If we went with the private property, it would be about a mile up to the property. From there, you have to consider the laterals that are going to go out and the sprinkler systems. And there's some optimization that can happen once we have the results of phase 2, so that we can minimize you don't have to run the water all day. You can make a larger system and discharge more at one time, so that it's only operating for a few hours, and balance out to optimize your costs and your energy usage. And then a pretty significant consideration is just the elevation change. Once you start to get north, it gets really hilly. So if we can make the private property work, it's closer, it requires less pumping, then that would obviously be ideal. But we want to make sure we keep our options open, so we're not closing off anything that can work out. And then just land acquisition, looking at whether the city wants to purchase or work out a long-term lease. And once we have the property identified, that's something that we'll work directly with y'all on the preferences. And then what's coming up, what you guys can expect next time you see us, we're going to do the phase 2 study to identify the land treatment areas. Take all of these different puzzle pieces for the collection, the treatment, and the discharge, and try to find the most cost-effective way to put all those pieces together. And then start really refining the treatment costs, and work with some of the equipment suppliers to see where we can cut a little cost, what really needs to happen. And you guys have any questions about that piece?
When are we gonna get started?
Get your checkbook out,
Write a
Andy.
bunch of grants first.
No, I mean, we can, I anticipate that, we'd like to come back in probably 2 months, probably in April, and we'll have a lot more of these costs for you, and puzzle pieces. And I would consider that sort of a 75 or 85% of our effort is getting to that point. And once that's done, then we start, working closely with the Department of Ecology and making sure that they're on board with what we're doing, and they would approve the solutions that we're offering. And if that's the case, we could be moving on to the next step by the summer, by early summer. And that next step would be doing a pre-design of whatever facility it is that is approved. That's the least cost alternative.
Does the land, does it all have to be in one section? What if we got like 5 acres here and another 5 acres here, and you can drop some off here? And
You can do that, it raises the cost of the whole system. So ideally, it would be in one location. And it could be in the end that maybe a combination of a little storage and land treatment might be the most cost effective. But it would be, if it's in a straight shot like this, that may be something.
Based on the hydrogeologists that we were teamed up with, had kind of 2 pieces of their goals. The first one was this phase 1, where they looked at all the history, all the data available to them, and to determine what they expect out of these different sites. And that's what they've done to kind of rule out this Weyerhaeuser property and determine some other properties. The next step is that they go out there and actually dig and see what it is.
is that area like a no-go zone at that point? Once you start spraying this stuff on there, does everybody have to stay off of it?
It can actually be used. There are requirements for how it's used. You can't grow anything that humans consume, but if you're growing straw, that's fine. It helps.
It would be restricted access. You don't want anybody and everybody walking through there, so it would be restricted, but it's not like a hazard zone.
Okay.
Especially because it's going to be pretty clean water that is being discharged.
I mean, this is the same water that we would be discharging to the river if the river requirements weren't so tight. So it's going to be good water, but I mean, there are going to be requirements of what you can and can't do with it.
Just not Aquafina.
You're right.
It won't, I'm sorry, it won't, I'm assuming that it wouldn't create a, like, somewhere down the road if the city stopped using that for, that land for application, there's not like a
Like the
hazardous waste sign, you can't ever use this property ever again for anything
like the
else.
landfill that we're dealing with.
Yeah, like the landfill,
No.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. super
No,
fun.
I imagine that there would be a period of time, a year or 6 months, while that, after you stop doing it, you still would use that land for growing crops, but it's not a hazardous site.
I know this sounds really weird, and hopefully, can it be at a park?
They do land application in parks. You have to treat the effluent has to be treated to a higher level. So they have different levels of treatment that can be discharged to different locations. So if you treat it really well, it can be discharged to parks and public spaces as well. A lot of golf courses will do this.
Generally, the cost to get it up to that next level, though, is significant.
Oh, is it?
So if lots of cities will do it, if they just absolutely don't have anywhere to put this water in the middle of a big city, and it has to be used somehow, you can treat it to that next higher standard, and then you can use it on parks. But for you guys, for the amount of land that's around the city and close by, I don't think that's going to be a cost-effective way to go. But we can look at that. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there are other questions, and y'all can feel free to share our contact information and the council.
Are you gonna be sending Jill a copy of this PowerPoint? Okay, great.
Yes, that would be fantastic. And when are we expecting to see you back again? You
Like I said,
April, probably.
I'd like to do it about 2 months from now.
Okay,
So if we can do the beginning of April,
okay.
do we?
That would be the 13th of April,
Okay, let's
would be our first council meeting. So do we want
kind
to
of pencil us in
tentatively-
for that.
Okay. And that's when we would expect to see some real numbers
Yep.
and you will have gone through all those scenarios and figured out which ones fit together.
Yeah,
that-
like I said, I expect that to be about an 85% effort, so most of it'll be there. 20% will still not be, so I won't have everything, but I expect we would have a lot more. And start getting some feel for what the bottom line is.
All right. Thank you, Civil West Engineering. Joe, when you're ready, public comment.
I had Mr. Hinkle, but I think he decided to come back to the next meeting,
Yeah,
so I don't have anybody else.
All right. City business. Council to consider contract extensions for, we have 2 tonight, the planning consultant.
Actually, the planning consultant is not ready yet, so we're gonna bump that again. We don't have the actual signature yet. We found an error in our contract, so, or in the language, so we need to fix something on his. It was a number thing, so we'll get that at the next
Okay.
meeting, so we can skip A and just do B.
All right. Planning consultant has been postponed. Hearings examiner. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to review the contract extension for the hearings examiner. Council?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 04-2017, adopting the hearing examiner contract extension as written.
We have a motion by Mr. Parsons to approve the resolution 042017, hearing examiner contract extension. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. Any discussion?
Second. Second.
All right, Mr. Daly already seconded it. So we've got a third. That's great. Any discussion? All in favor of approving resolution 042017, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 2, city business. Update on drainage near Annan Road.
Well, I went over to the bridge this morning during our torrential monsoon downpour and took some photos and took some photos. That's all I've gotten to do today.
How'd it look?
It's the same. It's the same as even when it don't rain. It's the same.
The same steady, slight flow.
Yeah.
I can report that on the city's end, we have our waste treatment operators have talked with operators in Winlock, and that they do have a camera system, and they are willing to entertain the idea of them coming out and helping us TV some of those lines.
All right.
So I sent in a request last week, because we have an agreement with the different cities where we can do that kind of work, and they'll give us a quote. However, their operator was out for training or something last week, and so I haven't gotten anything back yet. So I will be following up with her and seeing if we can get some kind of a quote run and see. We know that we had an emergency a few weeks ago on one of the private sewer lines, and we know that the place that we were able to get to come out and they had a TV system there. They had kind of a fancy one. They were $400 an hour. So we're going to see how Winlock compares to the retail and wherever we can get a good deal. But we're working on getting that, possibly Winlock, possibly just hire somebody.
Yeah, I noticed lots of places in town the drainage was a
Yeah.
lake.
This is a good time to really see that. And we had John go around today and take lots of pictures and document some of the worst places. And most of them had something to do with that same stretch. And so we're continuing that process. It's slow, but we're working on it. So
Great update.
One of the things that we've been talking about, the concern is when they punched through the road, not that they might have either punched through the pipe or just cut through. There was a person that said that he remembers digging up some of that pipe and just removing it.
Oh.
So that could be a huge...
I know
it's
that
not going to go if there's no pipe there.
I know that you had mentioned something to Diane about wanting to know who the company was that did that work.
The company and
So I went back and did some research, trying to figure out who it was. And the best we can tell, since it was 7 years ago when it happened, and I was not in the I was in the office, but I wasn't doing the city clerk position, so I personally wasn't involved in that. But that
How many years ago?
it was at least 7. Because it was 2010. What happened? The mayor was helping me to remember. It was right when the county was starting to take over the water system, and so the county is actually the ones who regulated all of whatever had to be done during that, and they were the ones that were supervising. They're the ones that hired whoever it was that came out and did the punching, and so I don't have any of that record.
they hired him? Because the
The city
PUD,
did not either the county, either the water department or the PUD. I don't know
The
who.
PUD,
Someone at the county did it. The city did not pay anyone to do that.
the PUD said that the
The
landowner
landowner did it.
Okay, well,
paid
it's
to
possible that the
hire
landowner
somebody
did.
to
Okay,
cut that
And
in.
I
okay.
think they hired local people that.
So we're thinking Mr. Milton hired somebody.
Mhm.
Okay, I just knew that it wasn't the city, so I assumed that it was the county that must have paid for it. But it's possible, yeah, maybe Mr. Milton knows who that is if he paid for it.
And do you think that he just hired people around town?
Mhm.
Okay.
You don't think he hired a specific, somebody had to have
I don't know,
equipment.
I'll,
Yeah, I can get you his phone number,
Let's see.
we can, we can make contact, after. And anyways, he's open, so we can get that information from him, or I can just send him an email. and ask
Okay.
him. But it's not the city, so I don't have that information, and we weren't,
And it's not
Involved.
PUD, so.
and it's not, so you've already talked to the PUD, and you know it's not them, so it's either the water department or Mr. Milton. So
Sure.
we can determine.
I think the video is going to be huge.
Mhm.
And depending on how much it is, if we've got it.
And I talked to John about it too, and even on the north side of the bridge, there's plenty of water coming over the hill, but it looked like where there should be pipes, that the water doubles coming out of the hill. So there's
Where's this
lots of
at?
questions at the bridge.
At the bridge?
Mhm.
So we'll have more information, hopefully.
Another interesting thing that I heard is there used to be pipe on both
Yes,
sides.
on both sides. That's what we're trying to, I think it's been something that's
Well,
been
there's a lot of
screwed up
history.
on both sides, so. But
There's a lot of history to our storm system in town, period, but nobody wanna listen to me. I've been here and I even worked on a little bit of it long, long time ago, 40 years or plus.
Well, I don't know, I know the mayor has talked to you about it and has heard all the information, so, if there's something else,
Was there a drain pipe, Andy, on both sides of the road?
Yeah, both sides.
Both sides.
There's a manhole that was 40 years ago. The pipe that was for the storm drain broke. Tommy Spain and his son, a long time ago, went in there and put a piece of PVC pipe in there. And so that stopped the storm water then from going into the sewer. Because it was going right into the sewer, running right down the sewer lagoon. And I tried to tell them here 2 or 3 years ago when they was digging up the clay tile. Burlington Northern, the mayor stood right there, and Ross McDowell was still in town, and myself, we stood right there. Watched them dig up the clay tile and throw it away and said, then they wondered why you still got a bad problem.
is that when they replaced the crossing there?
Huh?
Is that when they replaced the crossing or?
No, they didn't replace nothing, they was just trying to find out where the water was coming from.
Mm.
And they dug it out, clay tile, kicked it out in the ditch. There it is today.
yeah.
And now we got another problem that I mentioned 2 or 3 years ago, right here in the city council, right there at the post office. As you turn into the post office, coming out of the post office, you'll see a great big dip there. That's clay tile that runs all the way up the street. They better fix it.
A Street or the highway?
Huh?
Are you talking about A Street or the highway?
But it's not on the highway, it's right at the post office as you drive out.
So it's going parallel to the highway.
Yeah, it is parallel to the highway.
Okay, so it's along the highway, that road is where you're
Yeah.
talking, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, that whole section from the highway all the way down A Street is gonna be all redone So
Are they
that's
gonna be
gonna
able to
affect,
do,
it may affect some, we can talk about that when we get our engineer hired.
Well, right by the workshop,
Mhm.
they dug that up.
Yep.
When they was doing some work on the highway, I think, or someplace, or whatever. They dug that up and just, I don't even know if it's draining anymore.
Yep.
But there's so much of this stuff that's history.
Right.
I used to help the old boys around here in town when I was a construction.
Well, the thing is, right now, we need to know what's there now. You know, there's lots of history, lots of different things that have happened over time. So, and some things that have happened, settled and stuff that probably we're not even aware of. So I guess what we need to do is get this TVing done so we can pinpoint exactly, okay, there's this problem here and this problem here and this, and then we can put together a plan to fix it.
Yeah, I'm sure
So-
right down by the little crane, one of the public works guy dug in when they was working for the German Auto. And the state highway come and looked at him because he was digging too close to the barrier. And there was a pipe right there, that's the main one that, remember, that goes out the Holy Cross,
Mhm.
right there. And there's
So-
another one that was a
Yep.
problem. Then you go on up a little bit more, then another contractor was digging. Dig it up,
Yeah.
cover it up, forget all about it.
You know, we'll get
Yeah.
this TV and we'll start from one end and we'll fix them all the way up to the top.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a plan and got some motion going here, and we should see a little bit more work in a couple of weeks. All right. Item 3, council to consider resolution 06-2017 for interlocal agreement amendment for solid waste disposal district. I was the one that held this up 2 weeks ago, so I could review it more, and I got the original documents from 1992 from Jill, thank you, and I went through it line by line to look at the differences between the amendments, and it's almost exactly the same. All they've done is add items such as and maintain, besides just saying enact, and during the term of this agreement, they've added things like that. So just defining, they haven't really added any content to it. The big one, like our attorney had said, was where they removed the termination and withdrawal clauses. That was a big one. So, but other than that, unless we want to get heavily involved, it sounds like with the landfill group, we should probably, my opinion is, just let them keep doing what they're doing and keep the contract going, or the agreement.
Me
So.
too.
That's my 2 cents.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution to adopt Amendment 1 to the interlocal agreement as written.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Daly. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Would you mind just restating the resolution number included in that? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. We have a second to approve resolution 06-2017, the amendment 1 to the interlocal agreement with Lewis County Solid Waste Disposal District and Flow Control. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So, item 4, city business. Council consider resolution 07-2017 for voluntary correction agreement with the Hinkles.
So, Mr. Hinkle and Mrs. Hinkle went ahead and signed the agreement. They're continuing to do the work. They have part of it done, and they have more time to get it finished. They've agreed to the payment schedule for the $250 of attorney costs to the city for putting the agreement together for them. And they've made their first payment, and so they're on track. We just need to get
I'd
City
make a
approval.
motion- I make a motion then that we approve resolution number 07-2017 for voluntary correction agreement Harold Hinkle.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Wilson to approve 07-2017 voluntary correction agreement with Harold and Diane Hinkle. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Parsons. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving resolution 07-2017, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. Wilson, did you want to vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous. All right,
Sorry about that.
that
Are
is,
you waiting to give us a report? Oh,
would you like to give us a report?
anything exciting going on?
of the month, I'm sorry, he was. That's okay. I forgot.
Are you ready, Mr. Cheeseman?
Sure, I can if you want.
All right, special reports, in addition from the Sheriff's
You
Department.
probably didn't give them what we had for them.
I didn't.
January was a pretty quiet month. She didn't give you the stat deals, but it's 249 contacts. We had 11 calls, 24 traffic stops, and some traffic tickets written. So there was only one crime for the month, and it's being investigated. So other than that, there wasn't anything spectacular.
It's great news.
Quiet
That
month.
sounds spectacular.
Yeah, it was a quiet month, really.
We
With
like,
only 11 calls, so,
we like quiet, that's
yes,
good.
yeah, so.
All
Good.
right,
Thank you.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
have those numbers in your boxes in the morning, sorry about that.
All right. All right. Any other surprise special reports from anyone in the audience? All right, that is the end of our agenda. Meeting is adjourned at 7:07 p.m.